With me today is Benny Abbott from Specialty Products Incorporated. Benny's known in the industry as Benjy. Welcome, Benjy. Could you tell us a little bit about what you do at SPI?
Yes, I am the education and field technical director for SPI. I've been employed with them going on 5 years now, and I handle all of their training classes, day in, day out, specification need to do a certain project or what material needs to be used. Try to work with the sales team to pick out the right products that we offer in order for the customer's job to go as smooth as possible.
Okay. And then today's topic, we're going to talk about the uses and talk a little bit about polyurea, the uses and things like that. So the first question I would have for you, what is polyurea? What are some of the typical uses when it comes to coatings and linings?
Yeah, so we get a lot about what is this polyurea stuff, and it's as I do a lot of instructing in the industry, not just for SPI, but also for the Polyurea Development Association, as well as I teach some with SSPC as well with the plural component course, and with the PDA's definition of what is a polyurea, it is a description of a technology. So the word polyurea is a particular lining or coating system. It is a description of a technology, and within that technology is thousands and thousands of different formulations of that technology. So some of the more common that people may associate polyurea with is truck bed liners. And truck bed liners is, of course, is a polyurea material. Most of them would be a pure polyurea. There could be some hybrid systems, but with the pure polyureas, the truck bed lining material would not be a specific material that you would want to line the interior space of a large unleaded gasoline fuel storage tank. Okay, it's not that chemical resistant. So there's so then we would have to go to a more chemical resistant material that would work inside of that 24-hour a day, 7-day a week, 365 a year submersion service of unleaded gasoline, and there is systems out there that will handle that.
Very interesting.
So polyureas is a two-part system. One part isocyanate, and the other one a polymer resin, and they join together and they create a urea linkage, which comes the term polyurea.
So what I was interested, I learned something new. Dudley Primo, which we're very good friends with. There were
Yes.
some things that he shared with me, and one time we were actually meeting with the Ministry of Transportation in Peru, and he started talking about polyurea used on concrete for bridge deck. So there's
Oh,
so
yes.
many different applications for polyurea. A lot of times you hear people using for swimming pools and things like that, but it's just amazing the flexibility of that technology and its application. The big question I would
Most
have for you, the big question I have for you, there's always been a debate regarding epoxy and polyurea. Obviously, you have experience both in the formulation side, the technology, and then the application. You have a lot of a bigger experience when it comes out there in the field when it comes to polyurea. What are the advantages of polyurea over epoxy?
Well, there is several, and just right quick, I've been in the industrial coatings industry going on 33 polyureas. Polyureas got their start inside of the mid to late 80s. SPI as a company, they've been formulating them since 1990. And so I actually got my start with a lot of epoxy systems, epoxy mastics, coal tar epoxies, just your general off-the-shelf epoxy systems. And where that polyureas can be a little more superior in ways is their elasticity, their elongation strengths. They're very flexible. Now there is some rigid systems, but for the most part, they're all mostly flexible, very flexible systems. So where that you need maybe more elasticity inside of a system, where that you may have substrate movement, a epoxy system probably wouldn't be one that you'd want to use, because it's going to snap and crack. Mm-hmm. Where that the polyureas has that stretch ability. So trying to compare the two, you really can't, because they're on two different fields of technology groups. There's areas where that polyurea could be used in place of a epoxy, but there's also many areas where that a polyurea shouldn't be used in place of a epoxy. And sometimes I catch a lot of flack inside of the industry about that, because I remember early on, when I was still a contractor, looking at polyurea as adding into my systems to offer. I was told by several different ones inside of the industry at that time that polyureas was going to take over the world and epoxies was going to go away, and that hasn't happened yet. And I don't see it happening.
So really, everything is dependent on which system or technology on the service environment. What type of service use it's going to be. Is that correct?
Yeah, that, and also it could be due to the complexity of the substrate that needs to be coated, because your polyurea systems, you just can't mix up a little bit and start brushing them on inside of these hard to reach areas, or doing your normal stripe coating. So you have a very complex structure that's going to have to incorporate a lot of brush work, maybe roller work, and spray work. Well, polyurea may not be the one that you really want to choose there, just because most of them are based off of fast set thick film technologies. And these fast set systems, when you start trying to go around areas and it starts to sag, you create more deficiencies than what you ever want to even try to fix. So it can be very difficult.
Very interesting.
Yeah, I try to explain to people it's a painting process. Sort of one of the things that we get into with, there's polyurea systems that dries in as little as 5 to 6 seconds, and then there's other ones that takes minutes to dry. So when you get someone applying one of these longer setting materials, minute and a half plus, typically you'll get called back, hey, this stuff's running off the walls. Well, you're putting it on too heavy. It's a painting process. It'll only hold as much as it can hold.
So when it comes to the technology, on the equipment side, what type of equipment is used related to the application of polyureas?
Well, for the most part, as most of them do take some type of plural component equipment. We're dealing with not your typical plural component equipment that you may use for your current plural component epoxy system. The heaters has to have higher wattages. Typically, your flow rates could be about the same, but we're talking temperature ranges from 150 to more commonly 160, 170 range. But we're only needing about between 2,000 and 3,000 psi dynamic pressure, though, to get the impingement mix process. Then there's also some other systems that are low pressure applied, which uses basically up to 200 to 300 psi of pressure, but they're being mixed by a static mix process. Typically, that static mix process is taking place at the tip of the gun versus behind the gun, as most of your plural component epoxy systems are. Equipment-wise, any of the Graco E series, H series portioning pumps, they call them reactors, and then the PMC line, they're HXP series. It would be the 40 the PHX40. So those with the X series goes up to 3,500 psi.
Interesting. So we covered the topic of obviously what are polyureas, comparing them to epoxy systems,
Mhm.
the equipment technology that's required to apply this system, this technology. We covered a lot of stuff here. Before we close down this interview and maybe talk about what our current situation is going on with the coronavirus. Is there anything that we didn't talk about related to polyurea that you would want to share with everybody watching this interview?
Yeah, I think you did mention typical uses for polyureas and covered that much. Tank linings, because that's where I got my start inside of the coating industry. My dad was a industrial coder for 47 years, born and raised around water tanks and bridges and steel mills, and so I've started looking at polyureas for tank lining side, and it's used a lot in tank linings, whether potable, non-potable waters, chemical service, secondary containment. It's used a lot out inside of the oil fields for quick assembled secondary containment systems. It's used for flooring systems, like I said, bridge decks, waterproofing bridge decks before that they put down the asphalt road service. So one of our divisions, which we're now owned by a Versaplex company, so we have bridge preservation group, very big inside of the bridge deck waterproofing side. It's just basically your imagination is your limit where the polyureas can be used. It's used in a lot of different industries. Got a group of people now inside of another state applying it inside of some chicken processing plants. So that job is going on now. So again, it's used in a lot of different areas where that you need fast cleaning, a fast turnaround time. So you're very limited on shutdown time, or that your epoxies may take days for cure enough to put back into service. Most of your polyurea systems can give you minimum downtime and get back into service very quickly.
Very, very interesting. So, as a point of reference for people watching this interview, today is Friday, March 20th, 2020. In the United States, we have just started the first week of this shelter in place and work from home. And literally, it's amazing to see scenes in New York City where Manhattan, for example, it's a ghost town. Um, Benjy, in your professional opinion, looking at the protective coatings industry, what do you think are some of the ramifications of this global shutdown?
Right now, it's hard to really say, Jim. I mean, right now we've seen no really effect on our business side, but I can just assume that as if things progressively gets worse and more people has to stay indoors or up on their property, it's going to start affecting work. It's going to start affecting orders and manufacturing capability. As a company, we planned and have plenty of raw materials on hand to keep up with production. But if the workers can't get to work, that's going to be a problem.
So, do you see Congress here in the United States, Congress, maybe in May or June timeframe, before obviously, I would doubt that they're going to break for a summer break because of the situation. Do you see a major $1 trillion plus infrastructure bill coming out?
I would hope so. I hope, because we have to keep people working. We got to keep things moving ahead. We can't stop. If we stop, things just sort of goes idle, and we start going back. Backwards. We're America. We're strong. I think we can survive it. We just got to get out the grit and muscle and do it.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I think this will definitely test the fortitude of the American public, and also to our elected leaders as well, to
Yeah.
help guide us through this situation, this new reality we find ourselves in. Benjy, I really appreciate the opportunity to interview you and talk to you about these topics. Um, have a great day.
Jim, been nice doing it. You're welcome back here in my office at any time. This is sort of my home away from home. So if the bad things haven't got plenty of cigars here and a few little things, and I can see out my front window here, and in case the intruders come in,
You're
I'm
doing well.
ready.
You're doing well sheltering in place. That's good to hear.
That's right.
Hey, good health to you and good health to your
Yes, sir.
family and your friends.
Thank you.
And a shout out to everybody in Alabama.
Thank you very much. We love our SSPC family.
Appreciate it.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you. All right, we'll
Thank
talk to you soon.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Bye bye.